Right now, tonight, there's a giant chunk of ice flying through our solar system that is older than our sun. It showed up out of nowhere about a year ago. It was moving faster than anything humans have ever tracked flying through this part of space. And when scientists finally pointed their best telescopes at it, they found something strange. A metal that, as far as we know, only shows up completely alone in one place. Inside factories made by machines built by people, that is not made up. It is real. It is written down in real science papers. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why so many astronomers spent the last year arguing about it. This is the story of 3I Atlas. It is the third confirmed visitor from outside our solar system, and it is the comet that keeps refusing to make sense. The night nobody was ready for. Every night, a telescope in Chile named Atlas scans the sky. Its whole job is to watch for space rocks that might be heading toward Earth. Most nights, it finds nothing new, just the same old asteroids doing the same old laps around the sun. But on July 1st, 2025, Atlas caught something different. A tiny point of light was moving across the sky in a way nothing in its records matched. It did not look dangerous. It did not look huge. It just looked wrong. Within hours, other telescopes around the world turned to check it out. Within days, they had their answer, and it was a big one. This object was not orbiting our sun the way every comet and asteroid we know does. Normal comets loop around the sun again and again, like cars going around a track. This thing was doing something else. It was flying through on a path that never loops back. Once it leaves, it is gone. Forever. There's only one way an object ends up moving like that. It has to come from outside our solar system completely, not from some far corner of it, but from somewhere else in the galaxy, sent our way by a star that is not our sun. Scientists gave it a name, 3I Atlas. The letter I stands for interstellar, which just means it came from between the stars. The number 3 means it is only the third object like this humans have ever confirmed. The first was a strange little visitor called Oumuamua in 2017. The second was a more normal-looking comet called Borisov in 2019. This one made 3. Here's the part that made scientists sit up straight. When Atlas first spotted it, this comet was already moving at about 137,000 miles an hour. That is roughly 60 miles every single second. To put that in a way that actually makes sense, most jet planes fly around 500 to 600 miles an hour. This comet was moving over 200 times faster than that, and it was still far outside the orbit of Jupiter when they clocked it. Normal comets in our solar system get sped up by flying close to planets, kind of like a slingshot. But this comet was already screaming through space before it ever got near anything that could have sped it up. Something else did that, a long, long time ago, in a place far from here. Later, scientists went back and checked older photos taken by other telescopes, just to see if this thing had been hiding in plain sight. It had. They found faint traces of it in pictures taken 55 days before anyone noticed. It had been sitting right there in the data the whole time. Nobody was looking for it, so nobody saw it. So here's where we stand at the very start of this story. A piece of ice from another star system had been quietly flying toward us for who knows how long. And on July 1st, 2025, we finally noticed. What scientists would learn about it over the following months would turn out to be way stranger than anyone expected. Before we get into that, if stories like this get your brain buzzing, this is exactly what this channel covers. Real space discoveries explained without the wild guessing you see everywhere else. If you want to actually understand what is happening out there instead of just being told to feel scared or amazed, hit subscribe right now. There is already something else out there heading our way that nobody has spotted yet. Trust me, you do not want to miss that video when it happens. Only the third ever found. To understand why 3I Atlas caused such a stir, you need to know it was only the third object of its kind humans had ever caught. The first one showed up in 2017. It was called Oumuamua, and it was one of the strangest things anyone had ever seen. It tumbled through space in a weird way like a spinning cigar. It had no visible cloud of gas around it, no tail, nothing that made it look like a normal comet. It even sped up slightly as it left in a way nobody could fully explain using gravity alone. For a moment, some scientists wondered if it might be something built instead of something natural. In the end, most researchers landed on natural explanations. But Oumuamua never fully lost its mystery. The second one came in 2019. Its name was Borisov, and it behaved a lot more like the comets we already knew. It had a proper tail made of dust blowing off its surface. Its chemistry mostly matched what scientists expected from a regular comet. Borisov was interesting because it came from outside our solar system, but it was not strange the way Oumuamua was. Then came 3I Atlas, and it did not fit neatly into either box. It had an active cloud of gas and dust streaming off it, just like Borisov. But when scientists looked closer at what that cloud was actually made of, and how old the object seemed to be, they found something that put it in a category all its own. By October of 2025, astronomers had worked out just how extreme its flight path really was. Every object flying through space has a number that describes how stretched out its path is. A number close to 0 means something is looping in a nice, tight circle. A number way above 1 means it is barely bound to anything at all, just passing through on its way somewhere else. 3I Atlas came in at about 6.1. That made it the most extreme of the 3 interstellar visitors so far, by a wide margin. This thing was not just passing through our solar system, it was blasting through it. Scientists also noticed something odd buried in older data. NASA has a spacecraft called TESS that takes pictures of huge patches of sky, mostly to look for planets around other stars. When researchers checked old TESS pictures taken before 3I Atlas was officially found, they spotted faint hints that it may have already been releasing gas, even while it was still incredibly far from the sun. Comets in our own solar system usually stay quiet and frozen until they get much closer to the sun's heat. This one seemed to be waking up early. So right from the start, before anyone had even found the biggest surprises, 3I Atlas was already breaking the pattern. It moved faster and sharper than the 2 visitors before it, and it seemed to be doing things comets are not supposed to do this far from the sun. That was only the warm-up. To understand what came next, we need to talk about what this thing was actually made of, because that is where things stopped being just unusual and started being genuinely puzzling. Ice from a world we have never seen. Every comet in our own solar system was born from the same leftover material that built the planets. That means when scientists study one of our local comets, they are basically studying a fossil from our own family history. 3I Atlas is not from our family at all. That difference showed up the moment telescopes checked what gas was pouring off it. In August of 2025, NASA pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at the incoming comet. Hubble could not see the solid core directly because a cloud of dust and gas was wrapped around it, hiding it from view. But by carefully studying that glow, scientists worked out rough limits for how big the core underneath might be. Their first guess placed it somewhere between about 440 meters and 5.6 kilometers across. That is a huge range, and it tells you something important. Nobody had ever studied anything quite like this up close before, so there was nothing to compare it to. As the comet kept moving closer to the sun and started warming up, 2 of the most advanced telescopes we have, the James Webb Space Telescope and a newer mission called Sphere-X, both got a good look at the gas streaming off it. In a normal solar system comet, you would expect that gas to be mostly water vapor, since water ice is the most common frozen material comets carry. That is not even close to what they found. The cloud around 3I Atlas was almost entirely made of carbon dioxide, about 95% of it. Water only made up a tiny sliver. Webb also spotted small ice particles and a bit of carbon monoxide gas mixed in, which told scientists this object was made of several different frozen layers, all warming up together as it got closer to the sun. Why does that matter so much? Because carbon dioxide ice only forms and survives in places that are extremely cold, colder than where our own solar system's comets were built. For 3I Atlas to be carrying that much of it, it must have formed somewhere far colder than anything in our neighborhood of the galaxy. Then came the part that really changed everything. Scientists wanted to know how old this object actually was, and they had a clever way to figure it out. Almost all the carbon in our entire galaxy was made inside stars. There are 2 slightly different versions of carbon atoms out there. One is common, and one is rarer and heavier. The balance between these 2 shifts slowly over time, as stars are born, live, and die across billions of years. So if you carefully measure that balance in an object, you can get a rough idea of how long ago its material was formed. A team led by a scientist named Martin Cordner at NASA used Webb to measure that balance in the gas coming off 3I Atlas. What they found was startling. The comet had way less of the rare, heavy carbon than anything ever measured in our own solar system. Working backward, using models of how our galaxy has changed over time, they figured out this object likely formed somewhere between 10 and 12 billion years ago. Just sit with that number for a second. Our own solar system, sun and all, is about 4.6 billion years old. The entire universe itself is only about 13.8 billion years old. That means this comet may have finished forming before our sun even existed, back when the universe itself was still fairly young. Cordner told reporters it might be the oldest object ever observed passing through our solar system. Honestly, that is not an exaggeration. There was one more clue hiding in the data. Water is made of hydrogen, and just like carbon, hydrogen comes in a slightly heavier version too. Webb found that the water coming off 3I Atlas had way more of that heavier version than water from our own solar system's comets. In some cases, around 30 times more. That kind of heavy water only tends to form in incredibly cold places, colder than almost anywhere close to a star. Combined with the ancient carbon result, everything pointed in the same direction. This object formed somewhere unbelievably cold, unbelievably long ago, in a part of the galaxy far older and far different from our own little corner of it. Well, an astronomer named Darrell Seligman who studies objects like this closely but was not involved in that particular study, said that before these measurements, getting this kind of detailed information from a visitor like this was something scientists could only dream about. So, by this point, we already know 3I Atlas is ancient. We know it is bitterly cold on the inside. And we know it came from somewhere our solar system has no connection to at all. That alone would have made headlines. But it is not even the strangest thing scientists found. The strangest thing was still coming, and it had nothing to do with ice at all. The metal that should not be alone. In October of 2025, a team using a giant telescope in Chile called the Very Large Telescope pointed its instruments at the gas cloud around 3I Atlas. They picked up something nobody expected, a clear signal of nickel gas. Later, a second telescope in Hawaii confirmed the same thing. Nickel really was pouring off this comet. On its own, that would not be a huge deal. Nickel has been spotted coming off comets before, including Borisov, the interstellar visitor that came through back in 2019. What made this different was not that nickel was there, it was what was missing. Every single time nickel has ever been detected coming off a comet before, iron shows up right alongside it. The two metals are almost always found together because they are forged together deep inside dying stars. They tend to travel through space bound to each other, almost like two old friends who never separate. In 3I Atlas, the nickel signal was strong and clear. The iron signal was barely there at all. Astronomers scrambled to explain it. Comets are usually far too cold for solid chunks of metal to just turn straight into gas, so something else had to be pulling that nickel free. Some kind of chemical trick that could release nickel without needing the intense heat that would normally be required. There's a known process that can do something like this, where nickel gets trapped inside a fragile molecule that can break apart even in weak sunlight, letting nickel escape while iron stays locked up in tougher material that holds together longer. Most scientists studying the comet think this is the most likely answer. But here's the part worth being honest about. At the time these detections were happening, nobody had fully confirmed exactly which molecule was doing this, or exactly why. Several published science papers used the word puzzling to describe it, because nothing in any solar system comet on record looks quite like this pattern. And that is exactly where things got interesting to a much wider audience than just scientists. A physicist at Harvard named Avi Loeb, who has spent years searching for signs that something out there might be built rather than born, pointed out that here on Earth, nickel showing up completely alone without iron is something we mainly see in one specific place. Factories, places built by people using machines specifically designed to purify nickel and strip the iron out of it for things like batteries and stainless steel. He raised the question publicly more than once. Could this pattern be a sign of something artificial instead of something natural? It is important to be clear about something here. This is very much a minority opinion. The overwhelming majority of astronomers studying 3I Atlas, including the very scientists who found the nickel in the first place, believe this is a natural chemical process tied to how ancient and unusually cold this object is, not evidence of anything built by anyone. But here's the thing that really shows how seriously scientists take even the smallest chance of something unusual. A team of researchers did not just argue about it online, they took action. They pointed a real radio telescope, one specifically built to search for artificial signals from other worlds, directly at 3I Atlas as it passed through our solar system. They scanned across many different radio channels, listening carefully for anything that sounded like a real signal instead of natural noise. The result came back clean. No artificial signal was found. Nothing. On any channel, the telescope was able to check. That detail rarely makes it into the dramatic headlines, but it matters a lot. It shows that when a real scientific question came up, even one that sounded almost too strange to take seriously, the answer was not to guess from behind a desk. It was to go point an actual instrument at the sky and report exactly what was found and exactly what was not. So where does that leave us? We have a comet carrying a metal signature that, until now, humans had only ever seen coming from machines we built ourselves. And when we actually checked for signs of anything artificial, we found nothing at all. The most likely answer is still a strange, cold, natural chemical trick that nobody has ever caught happening on a comet before. But it took real detective work to get there. And honestly, that mystery is a big part of why this comet became such a huge story in the first place. There is one more twist. Scientists later noticed faint hints of this exact same nickel pattern in Borisov too, just much weaker. That suggests this strange chemistry might not be some one-time fluke. It might be a real feature of comets that form outside our solar system, something we simply never had the chance to notice until now. To understand what happens to this comet next, and why scientists are already bracing for more visitors like it, we need to fast forward to the end of the story. Watching it disappear forever. 3I Atlas made its closest pass by the Sun on October 29, 2025, staying safely inside the orbit of Mars the whole time. It also swung near Mars itself, close enough that NASA's Perseverance rover and several Mars orbiters managed to snap pictures of it. That made it the closest any of our spacecraft had ever gotten to a visitor from outside our solar system. It later passed near Earth in December of 2025, but it never came anywhere close to actually threatening our planet. NASA and the European Space Agency were both clear about that from the very beginning. There was never any real danger at any point in its journey. After that, it kept moving outward, past Jupiter, and it has been fading further into the distance ever since. As of this year, scientists are still squeezing new data out of it before it becomes too faint and too far away to study at all. Once that happens, it will keep flying forever, and it will never come back. Not in 100 years, not in a million. Its path only works one way. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. This comet formed somewhere between 10 and 12 billion years ago, around a star that might not even exist anymore. It has been drifting alone through empty space for longer than our entire solar system has existed, and it just happened to pass close enough for us to notice it, study it, and argue about it, all within about a year. Every single instrument that was ever going to get a good look at it has already had its turn. What is left now is a mountain of data sitting in the archives of Hubble, Webb, and observatories around the world, being studied and argued over for years to come, long after the comet itself is completely out of reach. And here's the part that should give you chills. This will not be the last one. Scientists are getting ready for a lot more visitors like this. A brand new telescope in Chile called the Vera Rubin Observatory just started working, and it carries the biggest camera ever attached to a telescope. Its entire job is to scan huge patches of sky over and over every single night, which makes it dramatically better at catching fast-moving objects like this one early. Scientists expect it to find many more interstellar visitors over the coming years, possibly dozens over the next decade. We used to think objects like the 3-eye Atlas were incredibly rare. Now, most researchers believe they have actually been drifting past our sun since the earliest days of our solar system. We simply never had the technology to notice them until very recently. And now that we finally do, the pace of discovery is only going to speed up from here. So somewhere out there tonight, past the edge of what any telescope can currently see, there is very likely a fourth interstellar object already heading our way. Nobody on Earth knows it yet, but somebody probably will, and probably a lot sooner than you would think. If this story blew your mind even a little, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell because you do not want to be the last to know when that next one finally shows up. Before you go, here's a question for you. If we ever did find real proof that something out there was built instead of born, would you actually want to know? Or would some part of you rather it stayed a mystery? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this one, there's another video linked right here about the last strange visitor that flew through our solar system and left scientists just as confused.